So in looking at it from this time period, I shake my head, but then I realize, no, I grew up with this. I kind of know what's going on, and it horrifies me to realize, oh, I had this my own background. Crap, I'm not innocent either. It's a very hard way to look, and it's really painful to do it. But if we make any progress at all, that has to be hung up to dry. And every generation has to realize, okay, here are the awkwardnesses, and I use that, here is the really embarrassing points of our past. This is what each of us has got to get past. We have to, and you can't not pass by saying, well, that's in the past, it doesn't matter anymore. That's what we hear a lot. I hear people say, well, no, stop that. You know better than that.
All right.
You know better than that. Sorry, yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're talking history. Of course, we are talking about the life and legacy of Frederick Douglass. But for us to understand who Frederick Douglass really is, we need to understand also what he did. And for us to be able to understand what he did, we also need to understand what is the context, what is the situation where he found himself that is reacting to. So that is why I ask you those questions. I'm going to ask you the last one, then I'm going to move into some other things specifically to him. Now, this is a kind of a curiosity of mine.
Okay.
In that, now, because the people, like you already explained, who believe that they are the real America, they are actually nothing more than extraction of European, also a certain extraction of the European, the English specifically, the Irish. Now, let's pretend that all white people are European. And let's pretend that all the white people are the real Americans. They are the only American. Every other person is an immigrant or is a foreigner.
Okay.
Now, this is my question. What do this group of people stand to lose if the United States was to function as a country by the Constitution even, where everybody is equal before the law, where everybody is accepted to have been created by God in the image of God and therefore to be treated equally by the law? Let me understand that.
Yeah. William Johnson, English philosopher, made a comment during the American Revolution. He had read the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson's opening line, men are created equal. And he looked at America, he goes, why is it, he probably cocked his head, why is it that those who squawk the loudest about their rights and privileges being lost to Parliament are those who hold a whole society in bondage? And so their men, Washington and Jefferson particularly, knew, and they could feel it in their bones, that this was hypocrisy. Many knew it would, and yet did not, and Jefferson particularly did not have the courage to buck it further. It takes a unique courage to tell your neighbors, we're wrong. And to be honest, we have to remove this blight, not the people. The people are not at fault. They were dragged here, some kicking and screaming, and the survivors enslaved. You know what we did, kind of thing. And then you have to deal with that issue. Some of the Quakers were the first the Christian churches to actually really formally say slavery is a morally foul thing. God forbid that we continue this. May God forgive us for the sin of this. And they're the first ones to act, use that religious language and say, this is so utterly wrong. And it screams at you because you read your own documents. And Douglass loved, he did honor the Constitution, the ideas of the founders. But his argument was to live up to it. And even later on, when Martin Luther King Jr. would talk about this, he said, the documents are good. The ideas are good. The carrying them out stinks. The practice really sucks, but you got the right idea, but you're not getting it. You're not doing it. Of course, maybe it's like reading the Ten Commandments or the Sermon on the Mount. The ideas are flawless, but boy, I ain't living up to it. And that is kind of where we're at in many ways. We don't want to throw out the ideals and recognize that, so, yeah, but yeah, it was it is hypocritical, or it was hypocritical um, of the founders, and it is of us in our own day and age when and then Douglas, in 50 early 1850s, he was asked in New York to give a speech. What is the Fourth of July to me? Or what is your Fourth of July to me? And it argues that, um, I have no place to honor the Fourth of July right now because I'm not part of it. And I think every group that comes in here, which is treated shabbily, unfairly, unequally, has a right to say the same thing. Okay, here's your document. Here's your political gospel. Live up to it. I've come here. I'm living here now. I was thrown out of my own country. I'm a refugee. I have no place to live. There is a natural human right to try and find a better life for yourself. The English even believed that during the midst of the Revolution. They didn't feel right about stopping immigration to the United States, even when they're at war with the United States, because they still felt there was a natural right to self-protection. If everything else has gone wrong, gone bad, you have a right to try and make a life for yourself, particularly when you're expected you could die. You're in such dire circumstances, even economically or in crime or war, to find a better place for yourself and your family. That should be one of the most universal earth of a human right on the planet. No one should have to be expected to sit and die comfortably in their own home. That just is absurd. And
All right.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, please go. No.
You got to give me a cutoff point. You got
No.
there or something. I'll keep going. So when somebody has commented, it comes earlier, that it is so important that we recognize and separate some of the personal lives and inconsistencies of our politicians and many of our particular founding generation, the men and women who would construct the framework of the documents and the first cases, the first practices with, okay, the documents say this, but then even the founders knew that this was supposed to grow. It had to grow. The Constitution was never meant to be a static, one time fits all. You have to grow into it. It is not sacred text. It has to be expanded upon. And they knew that. That's why it's written in a vague pattern, designed that as the nation grows, as it evolves, and as other people come into it, it's going to have to grow. And to say that, well, some people, they can never be, I hate to use this term, like us, or they can never really be Americans because they were Catholic. Catholics were said that you can never be Americans if you're Catholic because you can never really think democratically, because they're always going to be honoring the Pope. Just stop that silliness. Just stop it.
And anyway, if we think now, if we know the story, we can understand why they have that kind of feeling. Because, of course, the Catholic Church, the Vatican, is not in England, it's in Rome.
Yeah.
So we understand the kind of the shake-off that have been between the Anglican Church and people coming from the United Kingdom or coming from Northern Ireland, and why they might have that feeling. Anyway, that is by the way. So for Frederick Douglass, how did he rise to prominence? At what point can we say, yes, he is a leader? Yeah.
By the time he comes back from England in about 49, he gets a name for himself 39, throughout the early 40s, speaking at abolitionist movements in the North, Massachusetts, New York. New York is a very powerfully influential state, and it's a pretty radical state. A lot of wild ideas come out of New York, and they float around a lot. So there's a lot of, and it's the newspapers. Douglas becomes a newspaper editor in, I think, 49, the Northern Star. He starts a paper. He upsets Garrison very much because it's a rival paper to his. But then he argues with Garrison over two things. One, his relationship with Julia Griffith, because, that's part of it. That's used as an excuse And then Douglas also goes political on him.